Millis School Committee meeting on August 27th. Open. I'm here, Denise is here, Robin's here, Steve's here, Nancy's here, Terry is here tonight, and Dave is helping us by videotaping. What we're going to do tonight is take a tour of the new Clyde Brown School, and then we will move back over to the high school for the rest of our regular meeting. There we go. Whoever wants to take the lead, go ahead.
So, well, this is the cafeteria. As you can see, it's a nice, large, spacious room with the ability to project and have presentations here. And I forget how many people it seats.
260.
160.
200. Oh, yeah, 260, I believe.
260 students.
250. Excuse me.
Okay, 250 students can fit in here, and the kitchen equipment is beautiful and functioning, and everybody's very excited about the capabilities of the kitchen.
This is a multifunctional room, in that beyond just being the cafeteria, it's got a large screen, it's got the large projector, sound, and so this can be used for professional development and large group meeting, as well as, for the children eating in here. So it's got a lot of multifunction, and, we envision it being used, not just during the day, but, probably, many times in the evening, not only by the schools, but by conceivably the public as well.
Community groups.
So
So this is our full-size gymnasium, which is very exciting. Now we will have 2 gyms in the district. As you can see, it also functions as a auditorium with the screen and the stage at the far end, and padding along the walls, and behind you a rock climbing wall that will be, when the mats fold down, it will be safe and useful and integrated into not only PE classes but other learning activities that teachers can bring kids in to use that. So we're very excited. There's storage up high and a scoreboard that functions.
The old scoreboards at the old Clyde Brown were repurposed, and 4 of them are now at the middle high school, and 2 of them are going to be repurposed to the Veterans Memorial Building.
So this is the early learning wing, where preschool, kindergarten, and extended day classrooms are. In order to save space in the classroom, we have coat and boot areas outside the classroom in the common area. So the furniture in the classrooms is conducive to early learning, and there's a slight give to the chairs, so it actually is good for students ergonomically and allows them some movement. So each of our classrooms has age-appropriate furniture, of course, and some flexible seating.
And those bench areas that you'll see in lots of different classrooms, we have coming cushions that are being made by the corrections department. And we're really looking forward to those. They really have a nice design.
So there's a lot of design that goes into every classroom. You can't tell right now, but natural light is in every single classroom and is really helpful. So each wing has a teacher planning area and a common area for, could be indoor recess, could be utilized in myriad ways that we'll be developing with teachers. So each wing in the building has a water fill station so that students don't need to use plastic bottles, they can refill.
And it's filtered water.
Filtered water.
And what happens is the status will go from green to yellow to red. When it's red, it needs to be changed.
Our art teacher, Jim Poulos, designed the background for the quote that we picked out. And there's another one on the opposite wall. Thank you. So in our STEAM room, we have plenty of storage for the small robots that kids learn to program with, Spheros and others. We have plenty of equipment and space for creative design and engineering design work. This is our Learning Commons, and this is the 4th, 5th grade wing. Learning Commons classrooms open up onto the Learning Commons. We have the technology, we have print resources, and this will be a small group and project-based learning space that can be utilized by the students. We're very excited, and the teachers are very excited by this, because in the old building and in our middle school, students would be sprawled in the hallways, sitting on the floor. So now they have comfortable seating, plenty of room for project-based learning. One of the important aspects of our new building is that we've tried to honor the past, and this historical mural captures the other buildings in town that have been used for education in Millis since 1849 with the Ellis School. And we're very happy with how this mural turned out.
Good evening, and we're now picking up the regular portion of our meeting tonight. We had no one signed in for open session. We've just approved the meeting minutes from June 11th and a recommendation to dispose of excess furniture. So next we will take up consideration to replace the radios and walkie-talkies.
Okay, and I'm going to add a couple of things to be passed out while I chat with you all about this. I do have a lease proposal. I don't want people to have apoplexy when they see the number. So let me start by explaining a little bit of the history. We currently have what are referred to, well, essentially let me start by saying that we knew we were going to need to replace Clyde Brown radios. And we knew we were going to have to put a new antenna on the roof of the new Clyde Brown, which is what started all of this. In doing that, I think it started off thinking we were just going to replace a base radio and a new antenna on the roof. In investigating that, we first found out that our license was illegal. So currently every single radio in the district that we're running right now, and we're frankly going to continue to run until we make some decisions on how we're going to move forward, we're going to continue to run, but the license is illegal. So we need a new license. So we then move forward and think about, well, what are your options? Your options are twofold. One is to continue with a VHF license. Those are the style of radios we have now. The other is to go with UHF, which is a much clearer and cleaner reception. And quite frankly, in both old buildings like this one, but also in particular in new buildings where you have a lot of steel, like the new Clyde Brown, that UHF is a much better, frankly, radio frequency to use. It's also something that works much better in transmitting back and forth with buses. And of course, that's something that we obviously feel is very important. So if we were to move to UHF radios, we would need to replace every single radio. So the next question that comes up, and Nancy raised it to me today, and it's a very good question, well, when was the last time we replaced the radios? Sandy Labarge, who's our transportation coordinator, has been here 16 years. She does not remember ever replacing a radio in the buses. I asked John if he could trace down when we replaced basically the portables. He has no record of replacing the portables. Both of them know that we have, when we've needed to add a radio, I think we figured out there's maybe 3 radios that have been added in the last 3 years. but there's been no replacement. And for example, what we call base radios, the parts are no longer available for those radios, which means that they really need to be at least 10 years old, because manufacturers need to keep parts for a product that they produce for at least 10 years. That's required by law. And then just looking at the style of radios, I've been kind of doing this a while, and I know that at least a good 50%, if not more, of the portables are simply an old style Kenwood portable radio that simply really isn't sold anymore. So that led me to, and I should also add that, and I think I noted in the memo, a complicating factor in all of this, though I think it was sort of one of those things that was kind of good luck as well, is the person who has previously serviced our radios retired. And is also the same person, I guess, at one point in time serviced the town radios. They're kind of looking for somebody as well. They referred me to a company, Cyber Communications. Cyber Communications happens to have the state contract. So they came out, they looked at our situation, they felt that we could put a repeater, and it's a magnetic mount, so there'd be no roof penetration. One repeater on top of the Clyde Brown, because that would be the higher school. And then we would basically replace all of our radios with new UHF digital radios. They could be programmed with essentially a frequency for each school, frequency for extended day, but they would also have the ability to do some things that we haven't been able to do in the past. So for example, for groups that we want to program these radios to do this with, let's say custodians, we would have the ability to have custodians talk to each other off frequency. So they could communicate without tying up a frequency. With extended day, they could talk to each other without tying up a frequency. Special ed, we don't necessarily have a lot of radios tied up with special ed, but were we to move to that format at some point in time, we could do the same thing. And that, of course, is very attractive, because obviously there's reasons that special ed would want to communicate and not necessarily have that being broadcast over the airwaves for the community to hear. They're digital programmable radios. They're radios that can tie in with the town very easily. We have spoken with the chiefs. There is some interest in perhaps having at least a select number of radios, perhaps tied into certain frequencies with the town for safety and security reasons. Not every one. Okay, and that's a discussion that's still ongoing. For example, and actually I don't know this would be one of our radios, but the sort of the reverse, we've talked about Dale, am I get the right name? The
Officer
SRO.
Bickford, yes.
Yeah, actually having his radio programmed with our frequencies once the new frequencies are established. Because right now he couldn't do that because, again, he's on a UHF frequency and we're on a VHF frequency. It is not something we totally anticipated. I did anticipate that I would be buying some radios for Clyde Brown. So I had, as part of the contingency we'd set aside, had some money set aside in the budget, thinking that that was probably something we were going to need to do. I did not expect to do something to this extent. So what I handed out to you this evening is I laid out, and what I'm proposing is a 3-year lease. I'd love to do a 5-year lease. We can't do that without bringing it forward to town meeting. And quite frankly, we really need to act on this quickly, because it's still going to take us about 6 weeks to get the repeater in and get everything set up. So year one would, actually all 3 years of the lease would be $28,326. So then I broke down the funding sources. So extended day is going to use about 10% of the radios. So extended day would pay $2,832.61 of each year's lease. And then facilities rental, I believe each year can handle, I've got, for this year at least, $9,446.30. Again, this year the balance that came forward was $14,661. And of course, this is before we take in any revenue this year. Transportation, ideally I would have attributed more money to transportation. I can put in $6,047 after looking at the budget, but we put a lot of salaries in the transportation revolving, and of course last year we bought 2 vans out of it. So we're kind of pushed a little bit in that particular fund. Would I next year be able to maybe attribute a little bit more to it? Kind of depends on how the year goes, but at the moment that's what I feel I can do this year. And then out of the general fund, as I say, I kind of had figured that I would spend about $10,000 this year, at least up to that amount, to purchase new radios anyways. And so that gives me the amount of money for a first-year lease payment. And then I made some notes down there. It would be with a dollar buyout. It would have, as any municipal lease does, has a non-funding clause. The average life of these radios is easily 10 years, though occasionally you have to replace batteries. Though batteries are getting better, so that's less of a problem than it was years ago. The one thing I would say that I would kind of warn you about that you would see in the budget, there would be one more radio and I think maybe one more repeater when the DPW garage is done, because Sandy's office would be moving up there. So that would be, we would typically put a base station up there. I don't know whether we'd need a repeater because I don't know whether or not we can piggyback off of whatever the DPW has. That's the only thing I don't know about at this point. Definitely know the radio, don't know about the repeater. I guess at that, I'd stop, and I know there's going to be questions because this is obviously a huge expense that certainly I didn't anticipate, and I'm guessing if I didn't, I'm guessing you didn't either.
Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's not anticipated, but thank you for finding the funding source. And then my question was, I wasn't positive on how many years before of a lease before we had to go to town meeting. So
Yeah, we can do up to 3. Okay. After 3, we have to go to town meeting.
And I mean, personally, I think this seems like a very sound plan, and I think this gets us our first year, and we can incorporate the 28,000 into next year's budget, and whether it's more out of revolving funds or less, we can figure that out based on what next year looks like.
Mr. Chair, so I echo the chairs. You've laid it out very well. Couple questions or comments. So it looks like right now we have 32 in the bus, and we can't touch those. They have to be in the bus.
Yeah.
The 46 portables. We were in a conversation with an unnamed union this summer, because things are not finalized until. But there was a discussion that they're not using their radios anymore. They do most of their work by cell phone, which we pushed back and said you really should be doing it by radios. But do we need all 46 of those radios? I don't want to take radios away, but have we changed the way we do business in certain aspects of the operation where we may not need as many radios as we had in the past?
This actually does cut down some radios from the past.
How many?
Probably about 10.
Okay.
All right. Don't know that they're necessarily all being cut down from custodial. Or from operations, I guess I'll say in a general sense. But we really tried to go through with each principal.
Okay.
Well, actually, each area
you vetted the
that
list.
uses them, yes.
Okay.
We actually went through each area that we knew used radios. And again, one of the ways we were actually to do an easy first edit is there are some places where we were using 2 radios. We were using a bus portable and an operations portable. And of course, with these, there'll be one.
You can just flick.
Yeah, you can just flick. So
you can toggle.
Yeah, so that was one quick way we were able to edit right away and reduce the radios that we needed to replace. And then again, I think what we were trying to do is say that, for example, even if we were going to use some radios in that particular situation, it's not a situation where everybody needs their own, okay? Because not everybody's working at the same time. So obviously there were some places where there's some sharing that can take place. And yes, we did talk about the fact of whether or not if the communication process is easier to be done with cell phones or whatever, then, that is something that we would look at, and if a phone is going to be better than a radio, then the radio's not
But
going to be.
I'm also a believer that
Yeah.
sometimes it's better on the radio so other people can hear what's going on and understand, and someone may be closer. So I don't think going to the phone is always the best way.
Well, and I think one of the things too is, again, with the feature of this radio, with being able to do the off-frequency conversation.
Direct.
I think that's one of the features that is I guess a feature that is, would be a new feature for the radio communications with these. And I think is something that we would look at and say, because of this and because of the ability to do crosstalk, and the analogy we would give to some of these folks with the old Nextel phones, okay, is that this is something that actually might renew some interest. Because that, as we understood, there's still some reminiscing of the old Nextel phones.
Right.
So that may be something of
And
interest.
so
to them.
my other observation or request, if we don't tie into the town's radio system, at a minimum, in my opinion, we should give the dispatch center at police and fire one radio so they can monitor if they so choose. Because it's one thing
Oh,
to have
absolutely.
Dale speak to be able to speak to the radios. He may not be here. He could be somewhere else. He could be off campus. But for them to at least have the radio to monitor it, that would be helpful.
And I will tell you, the Chief Sophia and I have had several conversations about this. Before we found out the worst case scenario news, he and I were actually already having conversations
Okay.
about this whole thing. So yes,
Because we can't have one point of failure being Dale because he's not
Absolutely.
always here.
absolutely.
So the
And
ability
I
just
think
to
they're
have the
very
one-
open. I think both the police and fire chief are very open to figuring out whatever lines of communications. The analogy that or not the exact analogy, the example I've given them before is a lot of times, justifiably so. The police and fire department don't necessarily want a direct line of communication between the school and either police or fire, but sometimes they want us to maybe have some communication with, for example, DPW, so that there is a link to a town frequency. And that's particularly useful sometimes for buses in bad weather and whatever. So I think those are issues that absolutely, we've already been discussing.
Okay.
And I have no question in my mind that we will work out those details.
Okay, that's all I had.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Carolina.
I make a motion to approve the business manager to effect a lease, a 3-year lease for a new radio communications contract for the district, spending up to $29,000 per year.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Terry, I gave you a little
Thank
extra
you,
just in
Terry.
case.
Thank
It looks
you.
like an exact number, but
I appreciate it. It's always nice to have a little wiggle room.
thank you.
All right, so next on our action items is consideration to approve the fall town warrants. I want to lump that in with reviewing the capital plan, because it, in essence, is the same thing. So next week, I believe it's on Wednesday, Nancy and I, at least, and Terry, are going to join Carrie at the Capital Planning Committee meeting where they're going to review the items on this capital planning list. And one, we want to look at it, and one of the reasons that we want to look at it and some of the questions that they're going to be looking at are, we've had a couple of items, you can see them, the hot water heater and the boiler are failing or potential failure, and we are requesting the capital planning committee to elevate these to the top of the list in November. But I wanted here first, and Terry can explain some of it, but a couple of things of, I guess, core questions that I have in that
we'll hear next week are, one, do we have time to wait till November, or is this something we should deal with and figure out later? Because as we always know, town meeting is a crapshoot. 95% of the time, everything goes as recommended, but it's possible that it doesn't. That's number one. Number two is these are things that were not on our high priority list in the spring. So justifiably so, the question I anticipate is, they weren't they weren't high priority in the spring. How are we at failure emergency stage now, when they weren't high priorities in the spring? So.
Okay. Well, let me start with the hot water heater. The hot water heater was in a situation where last spring we were trying to repair it and we thought we were going to be successful in repairing it. That didn't work. I mean, the bottom line is it just didn't work. And now it is in failure. And frankly, it is literally, right now, the only reason that it is not leaking worse is because the rest of the tank is sealed some of the leaks. The coil is not heating the water in there even close to temperature. And I will be honest, if this were not put forward and approved at the fall town meeting, we would be coming back to you right after that meeting and saying, we're going to gut John's facilities budget and replace it. That's how important of a priority this is. We do believe that we can buy ourselves time for the meeting. In other words, we think that the health inspector is willing to work with us knowing that we're pursuing the solution, but he's not going to put up with us not solving it. So
How long would it take to replace it?
it's probably from the decision to purchase it, to getting the boiler or the hot water heater here, and then installing it. I'm saying if we are fortunate, 2.5 weeks. If we're unfortunate, 6 weeks.
So
I would say that's probably the time frame we're talking about. Where we would be fortunate in that the timing, assuming that this waits till November, that the timing is we're moving to some degree. We're at a between stage in construction projects. So a lot of mechanicals go in January, February. They're not going in November, December. They're actually laying piping and they're setting up for this type of thing to go in. So it's actually not a bad time to be buying a commercial hot water heater. Now, again, I say that and then everybody in the world will want a commercial hot water heater when we do. And that's why it can become a 6-week project.
is the $30,000 number real?
Yes. We actually think we'll come in a little bit under that.
So personally, I'm struggling with the idea that we just don't do it and figure it out, because for a 2.5 week to 6 week process, I can't honestly sit here and say we should have a hot water heater that doesn't heat to appropriate temperature and we're buying time from the health inspector, when for $30,000, my opinion is we just do it.
We can do it. It will pretty much gut, we have the money, but it will pretty much gut, not totally, but pretty much gut the repairs and maintenance budget for the middle high school, right off to start the year. That would be the only thing I would say. I don't disagree with you, but I just want to lay that out.
Can we go to capital planning and say, we need to do this now? I mean, would they fund this? Could they fund this in town meeting and reimburse us? It's worth the question.
It's worth asking, and it's worth asking to see if they would do that, or if they would, theoretically, they're using free cash, and if they would transfer free cash over to us to do that.
No, we'd spend our money.
No.
Or
that's
can we
what-
put
but
it as
they-
a,
but
oh,
they-
I see, all
But
right.
it's free, they're gonna use free cash for
Right,
us.
right, right, right.
Or it's part of this article, and they do what they did at town meeting, and they bonded it and borrowed, and so they borrowed it all and put everything on that. I don't know how it would depend, but yes, we could absolutely ask the question of, we just replaced the water heater, would you find money out of free cash and give it to us to do this? I could see them justifiably answering yes or no, and I don't think they'd be wrong either way. I appreciate we'll be doing that, and I guess my response is, we then look at other revolving funds and we backfill. And we figure out what maintenance stuff isn't gonna get done, and we can move out of revolving funds $30,000 and
Yeah.
replenish that budget line item, and
And another way to look at it is, quite honestly, is if this had happened, if the boiler, if the hot water heater was working perfectly, and then it absolutely crashed in December, you would be doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
So I mean, I can't argue with moving on it tomorrow. I have no cogent argument for not saying, let's, go out and.
I appreciate the workaround, but that school's gonna open up, and now we're gonna make that
the idea that
a commissary for both places just seems, it's
No,
too
that
much.
can't happen.
For me too, it's to go to town meeting and say, we've known since August that we have a hot water heater that is unsafe, not heating to capacity, and the health inspector's been doing us a favor. I have no interest in sitting at town meeting and saying that.
I agree.
Well, I'm happy unless my boss tells me otherwise, I'm happy to go to John and say, John, let's go out and get 3 quotes and move on it. And if we can talk the capital planning committee into reimbursing us, great. And if we can't, then we'll make it work.
Well, there's a step in between. Mr. Chair,
Can we defer vote on this until we talk about the second warrant, which is the boilers, where we have a similar issue and it's $25,000? Can we not vote? Can we just
sure,
hold the
fair
vote
enough.
until we discuss?
We can do them separately, we can do them together.
no, I think,
I just want us to I'd rather have us have the discussion on
Fair
the
enough.
boilers too.
Okay.
'Cause
That's
I think
fine.
I think that the dollar figure, I'm not opposed to this plan at
Yeah.
all. I just want us to also talk about the boiler.
Okay.
Because I think
Let's
we
do
have
it.
2 things we're staring at. that we need to do.
That's a little different. And that I would say you can wait on. You have a 3 boiler system, okay? It's a redundant system. Right now, the way the system is designed, you have a primary and 2 backups. In theory, the school could operate on any one boiler. However, that's not obviously optimum. In theory, you're going to operate on 2 and always have one that's, if you will, resting. Okay? And you obviously try to keep rotating this to obviously keep them all. All 3 of them need varying degrees of repair. And they are of such types of repair that each one of them are such that that boiler could go down if this isn't done, that boiler could go down if this isn't done, that boiler could go down if this isn't done. Okay, again, the number's a good number. We think we'll come in underneath it to repair all 3. We think once we repair all 3, they will certainly last until such time as the overall heating and ventilation system is evaluated and ultimately replaced. We feel pretty good about that. And we do not feel that that is an eminent issue in a sense of timing. In other words, if we were to put this on a warrant article, it were to get approved in November, we would be lining up people to work on this right away, and the work on those can happen quickly. So it's like, the day after town meeting, John gets on the phone and says, come on in here, okay, do the work, and we're good to go. And we're probably barely into heating season. And again, because you have a redundant system, again, they can shut down a boiler, they can work on that boiler. Once that's done, they bring that one up, shut down another boiler, fix that one, Bring that one back up, shut down the third boiler, and you've done the work. So I don't think that is a situation that is like the hot water heater. The hot water heater, again, should we do it tomorrow? Yeah, probably we should.
All right.
How much, so the 25,000 on boilers is to repair all three?
Yes,
How
That's a
much-
real number?
that's a real number.
How much to repair any one of them?
Any one of them? I don't know that I have that off the top of my head. I think the most expensive one, if my memory serves me correct, might be around 14. And I think the least expensive might be around 4 or 5. Just because the types of things that are being done. There's
But you
one in
really can't,
particular that
we're
I
really
think-
not in a position to repair one and not the other because it's probably putting strain.
Yeah.
It probably should be all three.
The idea is to make your
do 'em all.
system whole again,
Right.
or as best we can make it whole again.
Unless we had an emergency and we had to do something immediately
Right.
just to get it back up and running. But the good news is it's August.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gibson?
so understanding that we didn't have either one of these on the capital planning list.
Right.
Is there a review happening to see if there's anything else that's missing that we should be putting on the capital planning list so that we try to avoid some of these
Well, I think,
surprises?
I guess one of those things is, and again, the capital planning committee, I think, is still kind of working out its own process. But one of the things we need to kind of figure out from them is when they want us to be adding things. So for example, and I know you and I have had this discussion, at some point in time, there is going to be probably wanting to put on this list down the road, not a next year thing, but down the road, a statement of interest. Okay, or actually Nancy and I talked about the other day, depending on the type of work that would be done in this building, it might not be a conventional statement of interest, but nonetheless, that would be on the capital planning. Not a next year thing, it's like 4 or 5 years down the road. But at some point in time, there's a time to add that. I know that John and Jim McKay and I have had sort of informal conversations with this whole plowing thing. Does it make sense to us to have a truck? And particularly with, more stuff to plow and his difficulty in plowing, does it make sense for us to get a truck and do some of this ourselves? So when is the time that they want us to add things? I don't know that that's clear to us yet. We
Yeah.
thought it was in August,
Right.
but I guess maybe it's not.
Hold on, can I back?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so, but as I look at these two things seem to me as if something that facilities would have brought forth as, we have old and aging boilers, and we need to put repair for those, or at least maintenance of those on the capital planning.
Well, except you see, I would argue we did put that forward. We put that forward as essentially what the third article is a $100,000 evaluation of the mechanical system, which includes the hot water heater and
Right.
the boilers, and then, of course, the roof, which is not mechanical but
Yeah.
ties into it.
Okay,
So-
so do we feel like these are surprises that get us, that have arisen, or are there, what I'm trying to figure out is, are there other large dollar maintenance functions or maintenance dollar amounts that we should be allocating or planning for, so that, a year from now, is it some other system that gonna
The only large system, and I think we've more or less outlined it there from the, I can't think of the report you guys had in 2013,
Oh,
Tetra Tech.
Tetra Tech report, is really the mechanical system for this building. And again, as I say, that did actually talk about the boiler, and it did talk about, I don't know if it talked about the hot water heater specifically.
Hot water integration.
Yeah, it did talk about hot water. So, I mean, it did talk about it in that report, and they were there as individual items. But we lowered them because what we were really saying is that, you can't tick those off individually. Because you had rooftop units, you have all kinds of different pieces to that. And so really the only way to look at the mechanicals is to say, all right, bring in an engineer, do the study, get the technical specs so that you can do a true RFP. And that way you have a number that says, okay, this is what the real number is to say, yeah, now we're going to go through and we're going to get all those things. And that's what it's going to cost.
So the answer to the question of why weren't these on the high priority list in the spring is we at least for the hot water heater, we thought we had a fix
We did,
to hold it. And
till it wasn't.
Right. And the second thing is because the thought process was we had all of them individually listed as medium priorities,
Right,
with the high priority being the study and evaluation, so that, which in theory would then have supported and kind of probably higher prioritized, or at least prioritized the order in here,
Right.
which was critical and which wasn't critical.
right.
So the idea was doing the study first, duct taping and patchworking till we got the study done, and then prioritizing from there.
Right, and it just happened that, as far as the hot water heater, again, it failed after, we thought we'd fixed it. And as far as the boiler, it's part of the mechanical system, and, we thought maybe it would hold together a little bit longer than it did, and now we just feel we've got to do some stuff to keep it going long enough. Because again, even if we, and I know we're not really talking about it specifically, but even let's just say for the sake of argument, and we have provided some potential funding sources for a study, even if we were to get that study approved this fall, by the time you get that study done, and then you were to go out to bid and you would get this work, I mean, you're talking about 2 years from now
Right.
before any of that work would conceivably be completed, if it's funded. And
Mr. Chair, I want to push back a little, because the study is a study of the mechanical systems in the roof. That's not to pay for
Correct.
the new boilers. It's not to pay for
Correct.
boilers, hot water heaters.
Correct.
So while I can appreciate the fact that we had a study, we were trying to do a repair, and I would have hoped that the repair worked, but I'm hoping that the operations manager, or at least the experts that he brought in, said, this is pretty much it. If this doesn't work, you're done. So I'm going to echo Ms. Gibbons' concern about, I don't remember seeing that as a medium. And if it was below as a medium, then we shouldn't have it as new up top. It shouldn't say new. It should say move from, I don't remember. I don't have my capital planning folder with
Well,
me.
I think it was down there, and it's new because, like you'll see, it's not just moving the item from below to the top. They just added a new row in instead of.
So maybe new is, maybe you should have an asterisk and explain what that means, because most people are going to see new and say, this is just a new item on there and you're putting it high on the priority list, and why was it not on your list at all when you did the last and final try at a repair? So I know there's a nuance.
Right, and simple fact is, the stuff that was medium, we didn't really pay attention to because it was medium. The capital planning committee was putting a whole list of high priorities on, and we were managing the high
Sure,
priorities.
and I think we should, as a committee, be prepared, or you, as the chair with the business manager and the superintendent, be prepared for them to question, well, why was that medium and why wasn't that high?
Right, and that's what we
Because
just- and that's what
6
we
months
just-
later,
Right, and
we
that's
are-
where we just
Oh,
identified the answer to that.
I'm not
well,
saying,
I'm not sure well, if we were down to one final repair, I'm not sure that should have been medium.
We can-
Fair enough.
no, but I think it's a valid criticism.
It's not a
think,
criticism, it's just,
Well-
we're preparing ourselves to go to a meeting
Right.
to answer questions of another board.
There's sort of two things here, and I think they're both valid. I think one of the things is that, you try your best to identify things as clearly and hopefully as far in advance as you can. And you hope you're pretty good at it.
Right.
But frankly, sometimes what you do, particularly in the public sector, is you'll look at something and you'll say, you know what, I think we're actually okay here, or I think this repair will work, or I think whatever. And then what happens is 3 or 4 months later, after you think you've got it, all of a sudden you don't got it. And you go back and you look and you say, you know what, we should have anticipated that this wasn't going to work the way we thought. Now, the other thing, however, is that, and this is also the tough thing in the public sector, is that sometimes circumstances change with the stresses that are put on the various aspects of infrastructure, things that none of us can anticipate. And I'm not saying that any of those happened here, but for example, if you have a boiler system that's doing okay, and all of a sudden you have a really, really hard winter, and again, I'm not saying that happened here.
Right.
All of a sudden what you thought was moving along pretty well, all of a sudden now you've got maybe 2/3 of your boiler system had so much stress and hadn't been properly maintained for a number of years prior that now you have problems that you did not anticipate you would have. So there's a couple of things that can happen there. Do I think that particularly maybe with the hot water heater, we maybe should have bitten the bullet and said, boy, we really need to get this on because the repair's not going to work? Maybe we should have.
Listen,
And I'm willing to say
I
that.
understand that this is a new process. I think this process has been helpful. I think it's been a lot of work to get to this point, but I said this at the meeting when we were in town hall. I think the fact that the capital planning committee exists and they're going through a very structured and organized way, I think it's a good thing. I'm just trying to be a little self-critical here and it's not just on you, Terry. It's not just on John. It's on all of us, right? You guys come here and you present, and it is our job to push back and ask questions. And
Absolutely.
I just think what I would say, maybe going back, if there's other things that potentially could be close that you think are under the umbrella of the mechanical, then maybe we need to call that out. Because the mechanical study is, once again, just a study to tell you what the roadmap is. It's still not that repair. So granted, we have a brand new building, so it's this building. Is there other systems in here that before we do that study and it's a year out and a year and a half out before we're going to town meeting, is there other things that we need to put somewhere on this list and prioritize in a different way with an asterisk saying it's going to be looked at through the study?
Understanding I'm not an engineer, I would say that the next piece of mechanical, that is probably a high priority. And again, one of the reasons that the whole study was talked about is your rooftop units. And they were talked about in 2013. And it's 5 years later.
So I see the study, so I don't know, and this is something for you to bring back to the committee, the capital planning.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to call that out with a note saying that the whole system will be looked at through the
Yeah.
study, but just so you know, this system is getting closer to
Yeah.
failure or replacement. So
Well-
then we're not having this conversation about
Right.
the boiler and the hot water.
I mean, you remodeled this building in 2000, right?
2001, I think.
2001.
Yeah,
All right,
2000.
2001. You essentially are closing in on a 19-year-old system,
Yep.
okay? That's and 19-year-old technology, all right? And anything that old, okay?
No one's questioning that,
Yeah.
Terry. I'm just saying, for this sheet,
Yeah, yeah.
going in,
Yeah,
to Denise's point, maybe
yeah.
we put that into place and,
Well, and I think one of the things that I'm going to address at the meeting next week is going to be, and truly just a question to them, because I haven't attended their meeting, so I don't know their thought process, but the definition of high, medium, and low.
Yeah.
Because what basically what you're saying, and I agree, is my mind is the roof pieces, we should just call them high. Put them on high. They may not
they're 20
get
years
funded.
old.
Right. So, you know, but it's, the approach that we took, and I don't know how the capital planning committee looked or other people looked, but the approach we took, which again gets into, you know, why is, you just look at the curriculum and instructional materials, we have high. Well, what's the definition of high? That's historically been the things that we've been trying to get funded for first, but we didn't put a boiler that needed to be replaced as high because we thought we were gonna get
Right.
through. Now, if, I guess, and I'm just anticipating what I'm looking at from the capital planning committee is, if we're gonna get pushback on what was deemed a medium versus high, if something goes wrong and it you know, and all of a sudden something jumps into high, then we just have to recalibrate what high is. Because then I'd err on putting everything, I'd elevate everything one level higher and the stuff at low.
You know,
would be-
that's an excellent question. Because, for example, and now that you say that, so for example, let me give you another example. Let's take the mechanical out of it. You have the original main power switch in this building. I mean the original one. If that fails, do you understand what's going to have to happen to replace it? You are going to shut down school probably for 8 to 12 weeks. This building will not be able to be occupied if that main power switch fails.
You have any reason to believe it's going to fail?
Do I have reason to believe it's going to fail? No. And typically you would not replace it until you renovated the building, which is why nobody put it as a high priority. However,
is that on the list?
It is on the switch, actually.
On the list? Where?
It's a C, I think. It's a C someplace. I know it was on the detailed list. I don't know why. I'm looking at this list and I'm wondering if there's a few things that aren't here. So I've got to go back and,
This is the front page
yeah, so I got to see.
Electrical service.
I got to see if there's
Is it
some links
electrical
missing.
service?
in the.
Yeah, it may be electrical service.
Because we have electrical service, electric panels, lighting upgrades. I think it's electrical service at 112 grand.
It's electrical service, I believe.
So we have it as it's on here as a low priority.
So
Right.
just go back to the other thing. Honestly, maybe it's just me. Just take new out.
It's fine.
Well, you say that's fine until you present this to them next Wednesday and they're saying, this is new.
Well,
Well, it's not new. It was on the list.
Well,
I went back
it's-
and looked through the document
Recategorized.
from last.
Yeah, I mean, we
Hey,
can pull
you're the
thing
one
up.
going.
I mean, I'm comfortable explaining where it is and where it came from, whether it's.
Is it on the list before? It wasn't on the list.
It was like a November 2018 Excel sheet that Carrie had sent us, and it's not on there. The other, like boiler room insulation.
See,
and
that's the
domestic
thing.
hot water
It's
stuff
called different stuff.
Is on there, just like it is on
if
this
that's
one.
if that's what where it was,
But
that's where
also-
it's.
It's still here. It's those boiler room.
I know, those are
insulation,
still
domestic
here.
hot water. That's all, and the hybrid boiler plant. Those are the only things under plumbing
So
on the old list.
So down in the list that's in medium, it says boiler room insulation. Is that the equivalent of repairing the main boiler?
Or
Well,
one above it, hybrid boiler plant.
Right.
Yeah, I
that's
think,
the
see,
whole
the hybrid
system,
boiler plant is a replacement.
the
Okay.
whole system.
So the reason it's new is because what we're doing is repairing the existing, not replacing it.
So those are on the ones from the one that I looked at.
So those two down below
Also.
would be part of a replacement of the overall mechanical.
So we had acknowledged on the list in the medium priority that these systems needed
Replacing.
Yep.
And now we're saying,
coming
one,
faster than
replace, and two, we need to repair.
So it was on the list as medium?
Yeah.
It's the same thing here on this list under number 92,
Yep.
93, and 94. Those are all, it's all on the same. Nothing says replace hot water heater or repair main boiler on the one that I looked at. I could not find that listed. But the three that are listed on the bottom section, hybrid boiler plant, boiler room insulation, and domestic hot water integration.
Yeah, because,
All those, that is listed how it was
yeah,
on the old one.
because the domestic hot water integration would tie in with the boiler replacement. Because what you would do when those three go together, when you're replacing it, what you would try to integrate is, and I think that's why it says domestic hot water integration, is you would essentially go to a commercial tankless system.
So we listed this stuff as in poor condition, according to
Right.
this condition
Right.
here,
Right.
and so that we need to replace it. It just so happens that we need to replace it sooner than we thought, and we're gonna have to make repairs before we can replace the whole system, from what it sounds like Terry's telling us. So that's how you can explain it.
So instead of
Those
doing
two
all
lines
three for
are-
about 180,000, we're asking to repair for 25
Right.
Well,
And replace
and
for
do,
30.
And do one on our
Right,
own.
and replace for 30.
Right.
And replace for 30.
The water.
Right.
The water.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Ch-
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, how do the replacement of the hot water heater fit into the hot water integration or any of the new things that we wanted on that bottom list? Is that something that we're gonna,
Yep.
like, are we gonna get it something new enough so that when we go to integrate this system to do the hybrid boiler or the integration, that will work with the boiler when we go to replace that, I guess?
I would say yes. The intent would be that if we're going to put in a hot water heater, then we'll get something that can integrate into a system. My vernacular is an HVA system, but actually what you just toured would be that kind of system. And we really haven't seen the boiler piece of it yet. We'll see that in the winter, but it essentially would integrate with that, and the hot water system then would basically, in a sense, become a hot water capacity for primarily in that renovated system in this building for the food service, because they're the principal user of hot water. And then and again, thinking about the tankless aspect of it would then be primarily used for sinks and the lavatories.
Sure, but so does that mean that, like, if we replace the hot water heater, do one of these things get taken off the list, like this domestic hot water integration, or I don't know how those three things on the bottom relate to the thing that we're replacing, I guess is what I'm asking.
I would say that the domestic hot water integration is less critical. Again, if you replace the whole system, then you still may want to have tankless hot water as part of an overall renovated system, and the
Right,
boiler
sure, no, I
becomes
understand,
redundant.
like, the principle of getting the
Right.
new one, but I'm asking, like,
But
so
yes,
can we, like,
you would
take
not
off that,
require
like,
it.
11,000
The 11,000 would
item,
not be required.
So we don't need that now because
Right.
we're instead spending the 30.
That's
To
correct.
get the new stuff, so we can get rid of that, or is the insulation happening with oh no, that's the hot water heater. So I guess as a selling point to the other committee, could we just say, like, look at, this
would
is what
take
we
the
need to
hot water
do.
integration
We're
off.
getting this
Yeah.
off,
Right.
this is gonna
That one
come
would go
complete
away.
with
The
the
hot
That
water
one, that one could go away.
The other two
boiler,
wouldn't go away.
the boiler repairs would be getting us through to a boiler replacement.
Right.
So that wouldn't,
So
one-
the boiler ones weren't, but like.
yeah, but the 11,000
so
could
we
go
can, like,
away.
tick something off and say,
Yep.
like, no,
When-
this is
when we're
good,
ti-
whatever.
When we're ticking stuff off, can we also move the medium up to the middle? So we are going into, sorry.
We can try.
That's not,
I know, we can try.
is this your sheet?
This is, well, actually, this is their coding system. And so I'm sorting based on their coding system,
Right.
and it sorts this way.
Do
But
some
I will
more
try
than
again.
that high that's on the bottom,
In
Yeah.
the middle,
like,
yeah.
in the middle.
So
Yeah.
what is it sorted on? Or is it not?
Can't you just cut and paste?
I will, that's what I'll probably
Insert?
do.
No.
It's-
No, that creates more work.
Yeah,
Looks like
You wanna
it's
stick
about
with their
five.
sheet.
I will endeavor to do that. John's sheet was this way too, so, and
And also, this is not a joke, can we, as this sheet changes, can we put a date stamp on this? So when this comes up, we know that this is the 8/27 sheet?
we can, this happens to be a Google sheet, so I
maybe
have to.
Can we make a date column as to say, like,
Yeah.
when?
We need to have dates because as
was
this thing
taken
grows.
care of, or this was done, so that we can also track, the hot
No,
water heaters.
yeah, but I'm talking something, I agree with you, I'm talking something separate that.
No, I know what he's talking
When
about.
the sheet- this sheet
It's like
that we
most of
have-
my Excel sheets, and they
Yeah,
have a
they
date on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is a Google sheet, And I'm still, I'll be honest with you, I'm sort of still learning my way around the Google.
The Google.
It's in the machine.
We'll figure out how to put a date.
We'll figure out how to put a date on it.
No, because I have paper, I just write 8/27, but
Right.
it would be nice to have a date stamp. I'm sure there's a way, all kidding aside, just as.
No,
the
no, I
sheet,
agree with you.
It grows and grows.
It helps
And we're
me.
looking back at what date was what. But I understand your point of yours is a separate request for a date.
Yep.
All right. Oh,
So.
did I make them?
No,
You didn't
so
yet.
what,
Oh.
so to Denise's point, now that we've talked about both, what do people want to do?
I think we have to go with what we said originally. I agree with Denise that we needed to have that conversation, but we need to we can't have not have hot water. We're 3 days away from school.
It's fine.
No, I completely agree.
Totally
That- so the
No,
other-
And
you raised it.
Yeah, I agree.
Was that conversation, are we
Yeah.
good with that conversation?
So
Yeah,
then
and
the
I
question
don't
is,
feel the need to
is
have
it-
to do the boilers right
Okay,
now because
that was-
thanks for all of that
That's fine.
information. Yep. Yeah, so I'm good with.
So, and the reason that I asked about the how much would each one cost is either A, if this doesn't get put by the CPC to do them, you know, how do we piecemeal, do we consider piecemealing, or we just do all three?
Well, no,
have to
I
figure
would
that
say
out.
for some reason that the boiler piece didn't come together, then we'd figure out how to do at least one of them.
Yep.
So, yes.
But the hot water heater is a
the
total
hot-
replacement.
my
There's
sense
no, there's no piecemealing anything.
No, John and I will start working on that tomorrow.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Catalano?
I make a motion to authorize the business manager to replace the hot water heater in the middle high school up to $30,000. Is that going to be enough?
That will be enough.
Up to $30,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay.
All right, so we've taken care of that. So that will come off. I'll explain to the capital planning committee that we have self-funded that.
I thought you were gonna ask for reimbursement if that's the. No?
I will test the waters
Okay.
and see. I would, as we've gone through this, I'm kind of thinking that we paid for 30, request the other 25,
Yeah.
and try and get it bumped up. So we've taken care of the absolute emergency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
And,
I like that.
That may be a good way to,
and, get the 25 elevated to approval, and that will have taken care of both of the high priority needs, in addition to then trying to get the study done.
if you also want to talk about our capacity to fund extra, you can also say that we had an unexpected cost of $30,000 for a new radio system that we're funding
Yep.
on our own.
Yep.
And because that would have been a capital planning
would have been.
committee. So we're now 60 grand
Yep.
Yep.
No, that's a
down
good
before
point.
the first day of school.
Yep.
So we don't have any more
Yep.
capacity to really fund things.
And I would also note, whether it's towards the study or whether it's towards the $25,000, you would note in that, and I noted it in the study, that we're basically telling them there's a fair amount of money that we're giving them back. The principal amount being from the old Clyde Brown roofing article.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think it's $49,000 or something like that was left in that article. So,
We did not need to replace the entire old Clyde Brown roof. We were able to get by with just some repairs.
we have to give them money?
So that is a town warrant that
Yep.
was funded
2 years ago,
3 years ago.
2 years ago.
So Mr. Wigan and I have had a meeting with the town administrator and finance director about the town warrants that were funded in the past, some of which we're still utilizing
Right.
and spending, but there are a couple that are no longer needed and we can turn back to the town.
And
Do we
were
have to
they-
turn back to the town?
Right, were they written so specifically
were
that
written-
we
yes,
don't
it's a
have
roofing.
another option?
And I think actually they thought that it was kind of good synergy because it was written as a roofing article. And so by shifting it from a roofing article for Clyde Brown to, in a sense, a sort of a roofing article
Study.
for the roofing study for middle high school, it
So
made
that
sense
is-
to them?
Okay, but that's assuming between you and the finance director and the town administrator,
They-
that the
CPC, yeah.
governing bodies of
Right.
town meeting are going to
Right.
abide by that when, if our other option was to leave the money in the article and allow us to then reduce the requested article by 50,000 and use then, or to find some other way, I would have been happy to entertain the ability to not put money in a pot for other people to then redetermine how it should be spent.
If I'm not mistaken, we have had to vote to return money in the
Yeah, I
past.
think
So
you have to-
there's
you have to
no-
vote on it.
They've had a discussion, but that we as a committee have to vote
No,
to return the money. Is
actually, I
that-
think the town meeting has to. It's a town meeting,
I thought we had a vote to bring it to town meeting to return it. There was one pocket we had to return. I forget what it was.
it's a town meeting appropriation. So I believe the town meeting has to change the appropriation.
But to Mr. Conroy's point, we should have a discussion here.
Yes.
We should have a discussion here before we have handshake deals
Well, that's
to
why,
return.
well, I don't
money.
know that it's necessarily a handshake deal. It's money that, conceivably is available.
But I also recall years when, unbeknownst to us,
Yes.
money was taken from prior warrant
Which-
articles, so,
Which also is not supposed to happen.
which
It's-
is,
Right.
so I
The-
don't think it needs to happen as a vote at town meeting, but it certainly is, we want it to be a
Well-
full, transparent process with school
Uh,
committee input and everybody's.
So you've had a discussion. We have not finalized
No.
what we want to do.
I would,
Correct.
yeah, because I would be happy to have it used for the purposes that would help facilitate any of this other stuff, but I also would not mind not having to have it go back into a pot and then have multiple groups, multiple boards have to decide how that.
I don't disagree with you. I will, and maybe this is something we want to actually get clarity from Andy on. I can tell you in other Massachusetts towns, it's always been the same, and that is because it's a town meeting appropriation, the town has to change the appropriation.
Right, so there are, and
It's
I
not
think
something
that
that's-
there's, no, but what happens is there are, and how I've seen it done here is there is oftentimes articles that are funded, and the funding source is an article that was previously approved.
Which is essentially the town changing the
Right.
appropriation. Yeah.
So that's how I've seen it done here.
Yeah.
And there have been times where in the explanation, I think the group has, whoever it was, whether it was an article for us or for somebody else, has either stood up or acknowledged that it wasn't needed for its intended purpose anymore. And so that's why whoever received it was fine with it going back or being repurposed. But we've held articles for lockers for years and years that we've just gone back to, and as long as it's for a locker, it didn't matter whether it
Right,
was.
agreed,
Right.
we
So-
agree.
All right, so we've got the main boiler, that'll go, replacing the hot water heater we just took care of. Are there any other articles, and this gets into the capital planning committee process. 'Cause I don't know of any articles that we would request the selectmen to put on outside of things that were going through the capital planning committee. Is that accurate?
I think that's fair. Although I think we should also add, before it gets lost in the shuffle, the HVAC unit, the stuff, the other priority that you had up on the roof, right? Is that what
Right,
it was,
and
HVAC?
Right, and I want to say that is also here. Mechanical roof-mounted equipment's, no, that's the supports. Now it's $180,000. The diffusers, cooling systems, I'm losing it, yes.
That's 1.5.
1,500. I mean, 1,500,000. Yeah,
So,
that covers both the rooftop units and the mechanical in-house, or in the building.
so based on not having that conversation about the definition of high, medium, and low, I I would ask that we make that high.
Okay, can
And,
change that.
and I would suggest that we put the, if it's not already on here or if it's not listed as high, I would put the
Main switch.
main switch
controller thing.
as a high priority. We can allocate it to a year way out.
Yep, yep,
But to explain it,
All right.
but I would put it on there as
all right.
it's,
And circle back to John if there's anything else that jumps out from him. He's not here, obviously, so.
No, when I talk to him tomorrow about the hot water heater, I'll talk to
I
him about
suspect
that.
you have had a lot of conversations, but it's worth another conversation to say, is
Yep.
there anything else we specifically either have to rename if it's in here to make it a little clearer or to add?
Yep,
We thought we were going to talk about it in the engineering study, but we really need to
right.
cull it out.
and if there's anything questionable about low, medium, high, bump them up.
Okay.
Just 'cause
No, I have no problem with that, because
'cause
you're right.
It's, I just, yeah.
And also, to get to your point, I don't see anything on here that's not, I don't see any other items that are not on this.
Right.
For fall town meeting, I think
So,
everything's there.
so then from that perspective, do we not need to take a vote of articles to send to the Board of Selectmen? Because we're not sending any articles.
We're packaging them up into the CPC,
We're
Into the warrant,
basically,
yeah, yeah,
into the
capital
CPC,
plan,
yeah.
right.
That makes, that, when do we have to have that, when do they
When
need
does the
them?
warrant close?
Next Monday.
It opens September 16th
Oh,
and closes.
Oh, all right.
so maybe
So
we
we
wait
can
until
clarify.
after your
Yeah,
conversation
yeah,
next
then we can-
Wednesday.
Oh, that's perfect, that's actually perfect timing, then we can,
Yep.
we can get that clarified next week, and then
At our
when we
following-
meet again, it'll be before the warrant closes, and we'll have time to do that.
So it opens on the 16th. I think our next meeting is
We've got the
10th.
the 10th.
10th and then the 24th, so we can do it on the, we can have a preliminary on the 10th and
Yeah.
either be done
Yep,
and.
that timing works out fine,
right,
because you go to
Or the
CPC.
24th and finalize it.
The 10th and the 24th.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this?
No.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Town warrants, there are no student and teacher reps, nothing for student time and learning. I did the capital plan, personnel, and beginning of year updates. Nancy.
So the newsletter, the back-to-school newsletter, has been posted on our website and sent out on listservs, I believe. So in that, we have a lot of information, including the meet our new staff. Our hiring is pretty much done, except for a couple of paraprofessional positions. What had happened was earlier in the summer, we had hired paraprofessionals, but they have since they were certified teachers who have now taken and landed full teaching positions elsewhere. So we're still looking for a couple of paraprofessionals. And other than that, we have a few new staff members that I would briefly just introduce you to. They do have a brief biography in the newsletter. Carolyn Chaplin will be our new high school special education teacher. She has a master's of education from American International College in Springfield and attended Assumption College as her undergraduate. Carolyn Doherty is the new long-term substitute teacher in grade 1 for a maternity leave for Jamie Giordano. Miss Doherty has been a substitute for us for a few years, and she is sharing that position with Amy Ball. She holds a Master of Education from Cambridge College. Rachel Downs is our new Spanish immersion long-term substitute teacher for grade 4 maternity leave for Mrs. Colcourt. She has over 10 years teaching experience, holds a Master's of Education from Lesley University and a bachelor's from Brandeis University. Mickey Foley has been hired as a new 5th grade teacher. She comes to us from the Franklin Public Schools, holds a Master of Education from the University of Mass Boston, and a Bachelor of Arts from Brandeis University. Rachel Goff is our new 7th grade Spanish teacher. She comes to us from the Hingham Public Schools. She holds a Master of Science and in Teaching and Learning and a bachelor's degree, both from the University of Southern Maine in Portland. Rachel Hayden is a special education teacher at the high school, coming to us again from the Franklin Public Schools, and she has a Master of Education from Simmons College and a bachelor's degree from UMass Amherst. Beata Lazinski is rejoining us as a part-time ELL teacher. She had been with us previously and holds a Master of Education in English as a second language from Rhode Island College, a Master of Arts in Russian language and literature from Ohio State University, and a Bachelor of Arts from Wheaton College in Norton. Paulina Saliba joins us as the middle school part-time unified arts teacher. She has taught in the Needham and Westwood Public Schools and also in Dover. She holds a master's degree from Pontificia Universidad Javeriana in Bogota, Colombia. She also holds a law degree. Jennifer Tower has been hired as our part-time music teacher for Clyde Brown Elementary. She has been a music teacher previously in the Canton Public Schools and also runs her own business, the Neponset Valley Music Together program in Medfield for early childhood music education. She has a Master of Education, Music Education from Arizona State and a Bachelor of Music Education from SUNY at Potsdam, SUNY, New York. Maria Vaccaro is from Venezuela, and she will be our FLES teacher and serving at the Clyde Brown School. She has taught for us before. Olivia Zattoli also has worked for us as a paraprofessional and recently completed her Master of Education in School Counseling at Bridgewater State College. She will be a bridge program clinician and program leader at the high school. And just today I hired a teacher, Renee Bernard, and she will be our part-time art music teacher. We had a late resignation. Our part-time art music teacher received an offer of full-time employment in another district and was looking for full-time employment, so we are excited that we were able to find a wonderful candidate that we hired just today for part-time art, and she will also be teaching one section in the high school. So it's been a very busy summer. Needless to say, the construction project has taken a tremendous amount of time also. We invited families in today for the Find Your Way Days, and Jason Phelps and Elise Malloy have done a phenomenal job getting everything ready in the new building. They trained some 5th grade peer leaders to be tour guides for the Find Your Way Days today, and there will be other days tomorrow after later in the day for families that were not able to make it during the day. Tomorrow we also have first day back for teachers. Our professional development is focused in each building on increasing learner engagement and empowerment, and we will be providing lunch for the faculties over at the new Clyde Brown building, so everybody will get to see the new building. And then on Thursday we have a again, all staff joining us. We will honor our veteran teachers and have our district meeting in the morning and then break for building meetings in the afternoon. I have to say that there are so many people to thank for the tremendous work that was done this summer to get ready. And there's still a lot of details to be ironed out and the punch list to go through for the new building, but everybody has done a tremendous job. The custodial staff, we had more students helping them. We hired this summer. The technology staff, everybody worked very hard. And again, Elise Malloy and Jason Phelps have done a tremendous job along with Mr. Wigan and John Engler. So we are very excited for this year to get underway.
Thank you. Next, we have, only thing on my report right now, meeting dates. So we have a draft calendar that and normally we meet the first and third Tuesdays, but since we're meeting this week and Labor Day and first day of school is next week, I recommended we push and do the second and fourth, and then that also allows us to do the second and fourth in October, which means we don't fall on Columbus Day week also. So it then brings us to November 4th, which would be town meeting. The question I guess we have is we could either meet on the next night, which would be the 5th, or we could push that to the 12th so that we're not meeting 2 nights in a row. We don't have to decide that right now, but yeah, I would just assume do the 12th.
I'd rather do the 12th. I'd rather meet 2 weeks in a row opposed to 2 nights in a row.
And then, so then we could,
My daughter's 18th birthday.
so then we could do the 19th, so we could go 3 weeks in a row. If we push the 19th to the 26th, that's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So I'd say we just do those 3 weeks and, okay, and then pick. Switching November, so November 5th is gonna be November 12th. And then the 19th stays the same, the 3rd would stay the same, 17th. The rest of them, I think, are fine, and we can revisit in December in the spring.
Mr. Chair, I know this is just the meeting dates, but it's jumping out at me. On the 24th, we're doing the Clyde Brown handbook. We still have unfinished business from the middle school handbook from the spring. There were things that we needed to be updated. There was 1 or 2 sections that we need to close the loop on. I think it was based on standard-based grading and participation. I forget exactly. I have my notes. I don't have the folder, but we need to circle back to that sooner than later.
Has the standards-based grading committee done anything since June?
No.
Okay. So I will just say that based on where we left in June, the clock is ticking for this year.
To reconvene the working group.
The working group was charged with multiple tasks when we left in June, the primary being addressing the concerns on the survey with regards to how 5th through 7th grade was handled. And the second tier of that was to come up with a transition plan for any intention of moving standards-based to 8th grade. And it's my recollection that it was, the priority was the 5th to 7th grade feedback and addressing, which was going to include some type of plan and criteria for evaluating improvement. So obviously, with no work being done since June, there There's not even a plan in place, so it's gonna be hard to get anything implemented for this year. All right. Subcommittee reports. Elementary School Building Committee. I'll just start just for TV and public. September 7th is the grand opening, we'll call it, for the public in ceremony at 10 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully everyone can come and attend and tour the building, and it'll be great. Denise, anything else from the Elementary School Building Committee?
No, I think Nancy covered it nicely. The only thing I would echo is just a huge thanks to Nancy, Terry, Elise, Jason, and all of the teachers. You guys had a chance to see it, but everyone has done a tremendous amount of work over the summer readying for the school's opening. So just a thank you for that, but nothing else to add.
Correspondence. We received an email today, and I have a letter here that was mailed, but the Norfolk County Sheriff is convening a mental health and juvenile substance abuse and mental health forum, task force is what he called it. And they asked for participants from each of the school committees in Norfolk County. I followed up with the individual from the sheriff's office who sent the email, and he said that they were looking probably at quarterly meetings, like an hour and a half. I'm happy to do it and just tell him I'll attend, and we can figure out. He didn't have a time frame of when it would start, but it actually, I'd be interested in doing it, so I'll do it. And then obviously when they come, if anybody wants to join me, they can. And then we can look at, but we did receive a thank you note from Drew O'Reilly, who I believe I still saw him on the at his house last weekend, so I don't think he's left yet.
It's probably going very shortly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Good kid.
last weekend and this weekend.
Very good kid.
So I'll pass that around. Any other school committee announcements? No? We have no old or new business. We are going to executive session, so I'll take a motion to go to executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to go to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Millis Custodial Union, not to return to open session.
Been moved and seconded. So roll call vote. Robin?
Yes.
I'm an aye. Steve?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. So we will our next meeting will be September 10th. But again, September 7th is the new Clyde Brown grand opening. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.